Well, the Nokuthula Simelane case is aimed at bringing closure to the 33-year-old abduction, torture and enforced disappearance of the young activist. While the Truth and Reconciliation Commission found that she had been kidnapped, tortured and forcibly disappeared, the location of her remains has never been revealed and her murderers have not yet been held to account. 3 of the accused applied for amnesty at the TRC for her kidnapping. It's also the first major prosecution to stem from the TRC. The Kulumani support group has been closely involved with this case, and its national director, Dr. Marjorie Jobson, joins us in studio now. Good afternoon, Doc. Thank you for your time on the SABC News Desk.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
A protracted legal battle here that's lasted more than 3 decades. Why has it taken the NPA this long to prosecute?
At the end of the amnesty hearings, which continued 3 years after the other human rights hearings concluded, about almost 400 files were handed over to the National Prosecuting Authority, where the judges decided that people had not argued the case clearly, that they couldn't qualify for amnesty. And so these cases are amongst the first that are now being tried. Those files are missing, unfortunately. The family of Nokuthula have contacted every agency related to the people who were given the files. Nobody has those files to hand. And so it is really remarkable that their perseverance has finally brought this case to court.
All right, so this morning the case postponed for 3.5 months to September. Now the alleged perpetrators want to appeal the state's refusal to cover their legal costs. What were the initial provisions regarding this on this note at the TRC, and did they meet these requirements in the first place?
Well, the issue is that all their costs were paid by the taxpayer when they applied for amnesty, but they chose to use their amnesty hearings to fail to disclose the full truth. And so the judges were never convinced of their arguments and they were denied amnesty they didn't ever argue what they had done with Nokuthula. And that is what they're now being held accountable for. And basically they chose not to tell the whole truth, and now they are trying to invoke the provisions of the amnesty hearings where their funds were paid for, their costs were covered by the state, and I think they have to now bear the costs themselves.
All right. The particular thing about this case is that there's no body. Now the NPA though feels that it has a strong case, and there are a number of legal precedents that do prove that you don't need a body to prosecute for murder. It's also the first prosecution to stem from the TRC. Do you think it opens the door to more cases like these, Marjorie?
Well, it's a very critical case to take forward into a trial. I mean, this delay is, again, very unfortunate for a family who've held their hopes of justice for so many years. But at the same time, it has to be the case that opens the door on all these other prosecutions, which we are busy working on. There are countless people who were denied amnesty and who should have been prosecuted, and those cases now have to be built up to go to court. And this case is the opening of the door for that process.
Marjorie, how would you respond to those that argue that you are just trying to open a Pandoras box here, a can of worms, so to speak, that will do more harm to reconciliation than good?
The harm that is being done to reconciliation is the refusal to tell the truth. The condition of the amnesty hearings was that there should be full disclosure, and in this case there was never full disclosure. We previously went and met one of those accused in his office. He's worked for the police, for the CID, for all these years since he was a security policeman, and he didn't deny that he actually knew what had happened to Nokuthula. And we said, well, if you don't come forward with the truth now, this case will go to court. You have a choice, and he still chose to have to go to trial.
There's a whole generation of South Africans who do not know who Nokuthula Simelane is. Just fill us in on who she was and what she stood for.
So Nokuthula was an activist from Bethel in Mpumalanga province. Her family were all politically active in the anti-apartheid movement. She studied at the University of Swaziland. She was a brilliant student. She had done a lot of community activities in Bethel running gumboot dancing groups for young people, many other things that young people there, who of course now 30 years older, still remember her for. And she won in her last year. She was about to graduate. She had won a scholarship to Cambridge University in the UK, and she came into Johannesburg she was called by someone whom she knew from the underground. She did not know that that person was now serving the apartheid regime as an Askari. And when she arrived at the Carlton Centre, she was bundled into the boot of a car, kept in the Norwood police station on the roof of their flats where their police officers live, tortured there for 5 days. Apparently people heard many screams, but nobody interfered. And then she was taken to this farm outside Rustenburg, where she was tortured for a further three weeks. The last thing was she was seen being put into a boot of a car, still alive, and was never seen again. And the people who are now charged with her murder are the people who were placed at the scene of putting her in the car and driving off with her.
Thank you. Dr. Marjorie Jobson, the National Director of the Kulumani Support Group, joining us on the SABC News Desk. Let's move on to some other news.